Okay.
I do order some off the internet.
I decided that I wanted to record this
Oh, you did? Okay.
just now, just this way. So I could remember, so I could make my talk, more like in order, or make it better, basically. So, get my papers out. And just like I was showing a couple of you before you came in, that all these, this is what stuff that I found in my computer because, okay, wait a minute. First, I want to talk about, I guess I need to talk about me and how I've come to be a deeply compassionate person. And what started this is when Kathy McNamara gave a talk on Dare to Be Great. And I thought, I used to dare to be great when I was working, and talking about my recovery and talking about, what I've done for myself. But I didn't associate it with being great because I was just telling my story, to help other people. Because my experience has been so much more healthy and spiritual than other people who have what I had, which is a serious mental illness, which was, started it after, had my problems after Lindsay, my daughter, was born, and postpartum depression, but then it basically was turned into postpartum depression with psychosis. So, which is
normal.
It's not normal, but
it is.
It does
in the
happen,
process.
right? And so I had my first hospitalization of many in March of 1981, and I remember it so clearly. I remember the whole thing. Well, it turned into this long hospitalization. I was 25. Lindsay was 2. And I had to be hospitalized because I needed to be. And it ended up being a hospitalization for a year and a half. A year and a half. And I went from hospital to hospital to hospital because I needed certain kind of care. And this was back in 1981 when things were so different. Insurance actually paid, for hospitalization. And I was given the best hospital that could possibly existed, which was Timberlawn in Dallas, and would be like what they called the country club of hospitals. And it was. But I had such good care. My doctor was the best doctor that I'd ever had, and that I've ever had, compared to all the doctors I've had. She was my doctor from 1981 to I think it was 88 or 89. And then she had a stroke, and she wasn't able to work anymore, really. It was a very serious stroke. And so then I got stuck with this other doctor who was not any good. And he diagnosed me with multiple personality.
Oh my gosh.
And that was not the case. And so I got sent to this hospital. I went to one in Austin. No, I went to one in Dallas, and then I went to one in Dallas, and then I went to one in Austin that were specifically for people with multiple personality. Well, that didn't help me, you know. So that just really screwed me up and made things worse. And I didn't get the medication that I'd been having.
Oh dear.
Plus, the medication that I was receiving back then wasn't near as good as it became in the late 80s. Because the depression medication didn't help, the psychotic medication was horrible to take because of side effects, and it didn't do anything. And so I was without brain medication. You know, my brain, what I described it as, my brain was broken. You know, it was like I broke my arm, and I didn't have a cast for it. You know, and it just became crazy. You know, I didn't have the ability to use it, for instance. I didn't have the ability to use my brain and think clearly. And it was just, you know that for Julie.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was, okay, so then I moved down from Dallas to Marble Falls in, I think it was 1991, with a friend that I lived with for, I think, 8 years or something. And I lived out there in the hill country, and I loved it. That just environment made me so happy because we lived on a lake. I'm a water person. I had to be.
That
I
helped
got
calm your
I had my
nerves, which
sailboat.
you needed.
Yeah, I had my own sailboat, and it was wonderful. And I got on disability, and which is not easy to do. Back then, it was easier. And plus, I was very fortunate to have parents that were financially able to take care of me and give me, you know, everything I needed. Because my disability was only $800 a month. I can't live on $800 a month. $800 a month. Yeah, back then. And an example of what it was like for me is that, okay, I received this $800 check, and I hadn't gotten a letter saying that I was approved for disability. So I got this $800 check, and I didn't understand it. And I thought, oh my God, they made a mistake. So what I did was I took this check, and I folded it up, and I put it in foil, and then I put it in a Cool Whip container and put it in the freezer. Which later, when I gave my story, everybody was saying, well, that was some cold, hard cash, you know? I was like, yeah, it was frozen, you know?
That's a good place to hide it.
But after, like, I did cash the check at some point because some people told me to. And that's how it was for me. I was just, you know, la, 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 you know. But I was living and I was breathing. And I was going to the mental health center in Burnett. And, but then we had to move to Austin, and because I needed to be hospitalized so much. And so it was like either an hour and a half drive to Austin each time I'd see my doctor, and then, you know, Mary Beth or whoever, you know, or the mental health local authority would take me into the hospital in Austin. So we decided we had to move there, which was heartbreaking because I had to leave my lake, and I had to leave beauty, and I had to come to a city. But one thing about me is that I'm just going to make the best of what I have. I've always been that way, and I'm so glad that comes natural to me, because I am not going to let my environment mess up me, the spirit in me and the me that I want to be, that I always want to be. So, okay. So then we moved down here, and one of the most, it's a turning point in my life when I started volunteering at this place, at a nonprofit called NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness. And I was stuffing letters and just being a volunteer, doing what I could, because I had gotten on good medication. It was making me stable. And so I started volunteering there. Well, after a few months, the boss comes into the room where we were, and she said, "Diana, come here." And I'm thinking, what did I do? They fire volunteers, and that's really what I was thinking. And so before we got to her office, she said, "Would you like to work here?" And I said, "For money?" And she said, "Yes, I'll pay you $10 an hour." And I thought I was the richest person in the world, because I was making money, like other adults. It was so exciting to make money, I wanted everybody to ask me, "What do you do? What do you do for a living?" Of course, that didn't happen. But so anyway, I worked there, and I got well, and then I just morphed into the Diana that I was meant to be, and became a helper, became a speaker to other people with mental illness, but especially to the family members of people with mental illness. Like Carol took a class to learn about mental illness. You remember that?
I sure do.
And
Took it more than once.
Yeah. She took it 10 times because No, I'm kidding. She got it. She got me. She was really great. She's been great for me for 26 long years.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry.
Okay.
Hi. I had to find my wallet, damn it.
Oh.
That's okay.
Out of the house.
Did you find it?
I did.
Okay. Well, I'm recording this
Uh-oh.
mostly I'm
Damn
recording
it.
it
You recorded the damn it?
for myself.
Okay.
For myself, and I'll edit it, and because I want to remember the order whatever.
Fine.
So you know a lot about my history.
I
So,
do.
Yeah, she knows a lot. She knows that I was
Scarlet.
queen of the alphabet.
Oh, yes.
I thought I invented the alphabet, and who knows? Which is that's part of psychosis, when you think things like that. Okay. So I started working. I became successful, which all these things that were happening to me had never happened to me before, and I wasn't conscious of, I was conscious living in this world, but I wasn't conscious of the fact that my journey was starting a new chapter, so to speak, and that I was doing things to help other people, because that's what I've always wanted to do, because I've had such a tremendous amount of compassion for people. Like, where's the one that I wrote? I wrote something, I was going to call this the beginning of compassion. So I've given you the history, a little bit of history about me. And so this is me growing up. When I was 8 years old, no one would sit next to Penelope on the bus to Trace Rio's camp. They made fun of her name And her name, and I knew her name wasn't who she was, nor how she acted, or even how she looked. So I sat next to her on the bus for the 2-hour drive to Tres Rios YMCA camp because I was sad for her. And it just made me sad, so sad for her, and I look back at that, and that's called compassion, because compassion is more than empathy in that, you understand their feelings and you have empathy and you feel sad for them, but then there's compassion, meaning with, come is with, passion means suffering, comes from the Greek etymology, like Angie gets. So anyway, I look back and I think how good that made me feel. And then I don't really remember much about camp because I got poison ivy and I had to leave. Okay, and so...
That seems to be common. You can't.
Did you? Oh, yeah. It's a lot of fun, isn't it? And so this is me. When I was in high school, milk cartons had pictures of missing children. Does anybody remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And so I would, when I opened the refrigerator, if the picture of the child was facing me, I turned it around because it hurt so bad to see that. I just couldn't, my heart I would just lose my breath, It would upset me so bad. And plus I didn't drink milk anyway. And thinking if they were kidnapped, it was just too much for me, and I didn't want to know it. And I wanted to help that poor girl boy out there, and I couldn't. Okay, and so now this is me with the gift of helping others actively, which Richard Rohr, I'll tell you about him later. I'll give you websites to go to learn about this stuff. Okay. So when Hurricane Katrina
12 hours.
landed on the city of New Orleans in 2005, I was unable to let go of the sad, painful pictures that were literally stuck in my brain of the people in New Orleans suffering. This devastation to human beings was supposed to be an act of God, which I thought was crazy, and I was helpless to give them aid. I will never forget a picture of people sleeping on a concrete bridge and so many other things. It was so painful to me, Yeah, it was just, there's no words for that. So fortunately, in 2005, I was working at NAMI, and a doctor from the mental health center called me and said, I need you to go to the Austin Convention Center because they have bussed in hundreds of people, like 1,000 people from New Orleans. And of course, I immediately just took that, and I called this one volunteer that I worked with, Cassie. She was only 18 years old. She had a 2-year-old baby, but she was so mature, and she went with me. And here's a funny thing that happened was when we walked through there and we were led to the place that we were going to go to be with kids that they didn't know where their parents were, and all this horrible stuff. Yeah.
Wow.
And so we walked past, and Cassie, who was with me, looked into her room, and she just was freaking out. She goes, and she had a name for him. I don't remember what it was, a movie that he made. And it was Matthew McConaughey. And I said, who is it? What is it? She goes, Matthew McConaughey. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Because this was 2005. I didn't know anything. Oh, she was just freaking out. So anyway, we did what we needed to do. And also Debbie Webb was there, and she was really helpful. And so finally, and I had Cassie wear, I had my Expect Recovery t-shirts. And I gave one to Cassie, who was like, like an extra small. So she wore a small anyway. She wore a small shirt. And so she got his autograph on the shirt.
Oh,
Nice.
And isn't that cool?
It is cool.
So that was real. So all this happened to me. And then the experience of being with those children and giving them the compassion that they needed from an adult, and for somebody who could just sit there and listen and love them and hug them and ask them questions, and then hopefully move it on to, what music do you like, And so one girl said she loves Snoop Dogg, which I didn't know who that was either. And so I asked this guy there called Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg got on this guy who knew him, got the girl on the phone where she talked to Snoop Dogg.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Cute.
And so then he said, I'll send you blah, 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 blah.
Wow.
And, isn't that amazing? Now that is compassion. That's what makes the world a better place, because we were helping people who their lives had been upended. They were devastated. They had nothing, nothing at all. Okay. So my ability to be compassionate and to be actively compassionate really worked out from having this job in mental health, and helping people. And I remember being in therapy, and I let my therapist know, that's Dee Dee, the person I've seen now for like 12 years. And in the beginning, I let her know, I said, I just want to live my personal truth. But I had no idea what that meant, I really didn't. And so what I've learned through the years is that my personal truth is compassion is going to save the world. It is the thing, it is the underlying thing from everything else that is going to save the world. Because when you have compassion for other people, you give of yourself, you bring them in, you pay attention to them, and you show concern and love, and you're able to give them comfort. And it's active. It's like a step above empathy, being active with someone. And isn't that the most compassion? Wouldn't you say that's the most basic, fundamental, true need of a human being? To become healthy, to learn how to get along, with the world. And wouldn't it be so great if right now we had compassion, as the big thing? I mean, compassion is love. Don't y'all think that? Mm-hmm. It is. Okay. So there are things that I was thinking about that I wanted to share, because I gave a talk on self-compassion when I was working at Austin State Hospital, and I had a bunch of questions for people, because this was for people who, like me, who are in recovery from mental illness, and for counselors and other people, providers that help people. So one thing that I asked is, have you ever considered that you need self-compassion? And so many people looked at me like, no, you have compassion for other people. And so that led us into self-compassion, because when you don't have self-compassion, you can't spread it out.
You can't give what you don't have.
You can't give what you don't have. Thank you. exactly. So, and this is not political, and I wish people would understand that what I'm talking about here is that we knew that life was going to be different if that person was going to be the president. We knew it. We all knew it. Not all, obviously. And so I spent quite a bit of time after my hero Kamala didn't win, sitting outside because I love gardening, and I did some serious thinking about how was I going to survive this. Well, one thing that I'm lucky is that I'm very lucky to have had a mental illness, because I've survived things that where I was alone. I didn't have the rest of the world suffering with me, and it's totally different. And so I was lucky to have this experience of being with everybody, and I realized that
It taught you.
Yeah, and that I was able to help people, move from, okay, we can't. One thing Kamala said was, when she was a little girl and she would come home complaining, she and her sister would come home complaining, her mom said, so what are you going to do about it? Instead of letting the complaint stay a complaint. And I thought about that, and I thought, man, I wish I would have had well, no, I did have a mother like that. I just don't remember. I did have a mother like that. And that just made a huge difference. Hearing her say that, and I thought that's such a basic example of why, we need people like her as leaders. So then, Friday, Carol and I got our hair cut. And then I realized, okay, a woman sat next to me, and she wanted to talk, and I did not want to talk. Because so many times, I don't want to talk, but I end up, just pretending like I'm interested, being nice. And at that moment, I was too upset about my denture problem. I was not in a place for small talk. I wanted to cry and think this problem through. I wanted my own compassion. I wanted to feel pissed off and sad and disappointed. I wanted to feel sorry for myself, and so I did. But that was compassion to me, self-compassion. Because I thought, think about yourself. This is, maybe you don't have horrible things happen. You don't live in Ukraine or anything like that. But this is painful for me. I can't eat peanuts. I can't eat nuts. There's so many things I can't eat that you have to have bottom dentures to be able to chew. And it really is upsetting. I've been to H-E-B and turned around and looked at the other side, and there was the nut section. And I thought, God, this is so, it's unfair. And it is unfair. Life is unfair. But, okay, so if life's unfair, give yourself compassion for the things that you can't, that you can't do, that you used to do, and that you want to do. So that made me really excited to realize that's what I was doing. I wasn't feeling sorry for myself. Well, I was feeling sorry for myself. But to me, I used it as compassion. Like, just let it be. This is your truth right now. There's nothing you can do about it. Oh, good, it's on. Okay. So what I realized is that one thing that led me to this experience of having self-compassion is I gave myself the boundaries to pay attention to my own needs by not listening to that woman, not engaging her. And I just thought, boundaries, that's what your therapists always think about. So I gave myself boundaries to pay attention to my own needs. And what I needed was just to sit there and think, things will change, you know, I've got Carol with me. She can't eat for me, but she's my wife who loves me. So I've got her, I'm not alone. And, you know, I want to use this time to...
Well, you just needed to be able to get over the disappointment that the fitting time that we went into. We were affirming that they were going to fit perfectly and everything was going to be just right, and it's what we had been waiting for and hoping for so very long.
2 years.
And finally they were here, and they weren't.
Over 2 years.
And
Yeah.
the realization that, guess we're gonna have to go through this some more. And you know, and you did a good job of holding up to
Yeah,
that
I did.
disappointment.
I did. Thank you. Yeah.
You didn't break down, and you didn't.
No. I had some
You just
tears.
took it in stride. Okay,
but,
we're
yeah.
gonna have to regroup.
Right. But I think to myself,
You did good.
yeah, right. The first thing I think to myself is this is not going to last forever. I know each day is going to be different, and it's going to be better as long as I take care of myself. And then just let it go and move on and put one
What you
foot in front of the
can do.
other and do what I can do. And, okay, so I realized that, well, I learned from a book called Self-Compassion. And I can share all this stuff with y'all later. I was going to have handouts, but I don't. This woman, Kristen Neff, wrote a book about self-compassion. She's a teacher at University of Texas. And so I read her book. And I emailed her, and she sent me some things, because I wanted to understand it. So I worked on that with another woman that I was working with, and we put together this slideshow and, you know, blah, blah. And then a few months ago, I was listening to this podcast about what is your best trait. And so I'm listening to people, what people have sent in, you know, as their best trait. And it was things like, I'm a good, you know, carpenter, or, you know, a good doctor, or whatever.
Gardener.
But the good part, their good trait was about what they do, you know. And then I thought to myself, my best trait is compassion. And I thought that's what I do, and that's who I am. So that's where, like, being a human being, being a human being and then a human doing. You understand what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really exciting to me that I thought that, because in the past, okay, after the question of what is your best trait, and I say compassion, later the question became, what is your worst trait? And I thought, compassion is my worst trait, because I spent so much time in my life not being nice to myself, not accepting myself, being different than other people. And my compassion for other people was so much more than for myself. I put so much time into these other people's lives, especially when I was working with patients at the hospital. And I would come home and I would cry, and I would think of this guy that, you know, he was homeless, and he would have to get out of the hospital, and he had nowhere to go. And they would have to find him somewhere to go. And I spent so much time thinking about that and I would cry for him, and then things would happen to me. And one thing that I learned, and Carol is really going to love this, is that, okay, what is your worst trait? My first thought was that I'm too judgmental. But immediately I realized compassion is my worst trait because I don't use it for myself, which has caused me to be mean to myself, and which has caused me to be mean to Carol. And I'm not respecting myself, and I'm not respecting her. I'm blaming her, for how I'm feeling. And so that's like my shadow self. When, I'm not treating her with kindness and respect for whatever plagues me. I take my anger out on the person I love the most, and I blame Carol for stupid stuff. We're married. Everybody blames their spouse for other stuff. And I didn't want to be that way because Carol is so giving. People who know her know how giving she is. She's the information factory, tells people about how to build stuff and, electricity stuff it's over my head. And that's her, what we call love language. That's how she loves people, is with her actions and her ability to have all this knowledge, to help people. And so that is just how blessed I have been. Someone told me when they heard my story, they said, "I'm so sorry that you had to go through that." And I said, "I'm not, because look who I've become. Because I've let it go. I've been able to get help from other people."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I didn't do this alone. I did it with, people who loved me. I did it with really good doctors and therapists. I did it with other patients and friends. And so I'm seriously, I think about it, and I feel really fortunate to have had the experiences that I've had, because I got through it, and now I'm not mean to myself. I'm not crazy, and I can say, people who have had mental illness, we can say we've been crazy, but we don't want other people calling us crazy.
And Julie would say, you had to admit you were crazy, and then that would be the ticket out.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and you use that word to describe yourself because that's what the world uses.
Wants to hear.
Yeah, right. Right, I remember you telling me that. Yeah, that's the ticket out. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And
it helps your brain make the necessary adjustments to free yourself. Right, and that in itself led her to self-compassion, because she thought, oh, this is an illness. My brain is broken, and nobody, there isn't a way, we don't know how to fix it. And it's a horrible thing for your brain to be broken. It's not like, they can go in and do surgery and you get a brain transplant, which I wish. No, I don't wish. I'm glad I got my own transplant. So, does anybody, so we want to open it up. Does anybody have any things they want to share about looking back, what has led you to having compassion for others and then realizing that you needed self-compassion? I'm sure these aren't things that you're going to be thinking about all the time like me. And, another thing that led me to this was when I was pulling weeds the other day.
And I looked at these plants and I thought, these are plants. But we call them weeds because they're plants that grew in the wrong place in your garden where you don't want them. And I thought to myself, that is what we're doing to immigrants. We're pulling them out of the ground and we're throwing them away. And they deserve to be here like any other person. And this is my seeds of faith journey, that I'm not going to let those weeds, I'm going to throw them out. What I'm going to do is I throw them out into the yard that's just,
where they can live.
Forest where they can live and grow seeds, and Carol can mow them up. And weeds, because they are plants more than they are a weed, means that they have nutrition and they have stuff inside them to help the soil. They give to the soil.
Sure. Everything has its purpose.
Everything has its purpose. So that's why gardening is so profound for me. It's just like I freak out when I see a seed come up, Like Angie gave me some Pride of Barbados seeds. And I'm so proud of myself. I'm like, look at this thing that I created. It's a seed. Yeah, I know. I can't wait to give you one. But they grow so slow from seeds. So anyway. So, who wants to?
One thing that just popped in my head when you were talking about the weeds, and so I'm thinking the two words came together, weed thoughts.
Oh, that's good.
So we have
okay.
We have weed thoughts, and we can pick them and eradicate them, put them in their place where they should belong.
Mm-hmm.
Where we have weed thoughts and they're not productive, and they were planted by us. Maybe we had self-compassion, or maybe we didn't have any compassion at all. And mostly we didn't have any compassion at all for anything that's happening around us. It's just all everybody else's fault, not mine. And so, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to live in the atmosphere that we're given to live in lately. Because my weed thoughts are really strong. And I need to pull those weed thoughts out and practice some more healthy thoughts.
Right, and having healthy thoughts takes you to compassion and self-compassion.
One thing that I can take a vitamin for my health, or eat a certain food for my health, or my brain, or take a medicine for my pain, or whatever, but I'm having pain here and here.
In your heart.
And it's so, it's hard to fix it.
It's just like me, the elephant under the table, the pink elephant under the table, that we're ignoring. Our needs, our rights, being thrown away, assaulted. And the pink elephant is,
Obvious.
it's obvious, but we're not seeing it because we've been trained to ignore it.
Right.
Right.
Paying taxes is actually the elephant. It funds bad things. It funds the people that's been misused.
Misuse it
Well,
for
they have
other
weed
reasons. Yeah.
They have weed thoughts.
Those are weeds. Yeah, that money. Yeah. Turns into a
And
weed.
so, and we tried to find the people who were going to appropriate the best thoughts or the best use of our
Funding.
taxes, we want to call it. And we want people to be taken care of in all branches. And that's really hard to manage. Or shall I'm gonna call it. I'm really working on forgiveness. So.
Well, I've given up that part. I mean, seriously. I'm not thinking, I'm not using that word in my head because I can't do it right now. I can't forgive Hitler. And that's a word that's just not in my vocabulary right now during this time. You know, my time is spent having thoughts about other people and what they're going through, planning my future, Carol's future, our future, and, you know, being with people like you, like all of you, and forgiveness is just not in the picture for me right now. I can't go there, you know, I just can't.
I think for me, forgiving myself is a big challenge.
Yeah.
I get so
That part.
involved in things. I feel like I'm so responsible for doing this, and I ought to do this, and I ought to take care of this
Yeah.
and this and this. And then it gets to be such a burden, and I'm very stressed, and I'm not doing well.
And then you get depressed.
And you know, I'm just not, you know, I just don't feel well. I don't have energy, you know, and it's like I've got to stop and just say, you just need to maybe take the day off. You know, you need to do something for yourself. Have compassion for yourself. Realize that, you know, I'm not functioning and able to be compassionate to others.
You know, sometimes you need a little more in a day.
Yeah, but I really do. I mean, like yesterday, I took a day where I didn't go to the nursing home, and I didn't do 2 or 3 other things that I usually do every day, and I just needed
Good.
that. I just needed that.
Yeah.
break,
You need that rest, yes.
That's great. I'm
Yeah.
glad you're telling me that because I worry about you, and I think I hope she's taking care of herself with all that you have going on in your life, you know?
But it's, you know, you realize that you need to take care of yourself.
Right, exactly.
Stop and.
Exactly. And then
You're
this
not
person,
good health.
you know, I'm worried about.
You're worried about me?
No, I'm not worried about you anymore.
Good.
But I just, when Theron was going through the end of his life kind of thing. So, do you want to share anything?
Yes.
Good.
A long time ago, the Dalai Lama was asked what the best word in the world, or whatever it was, and it was compassion. And that has stuck with me, you know. And I thought, wow, I was thinking, what's he gonna say? You know, love or whatever, you know, but compassion, that's all encompassing for his thought.
And now we're having it today. We're talking about it today.
Yeah. And so for myself, my compassion is for 2 people. Well, yeah, anyway, for my birth mom and her mother. They gave me away as soon as I was born. And the other person was my first husband, my ex-husband, ex-first husband, who was abusive to me and our daughters. And I just always had the thought, you know, I just wish I could just push a magic button and make him go away, you know. And I thought, I don't want any harm for him, you know. I just had to let him go. So, and then my self-compassion would be like just recently, you know, I moved here, but I counted the times, like a year and a half, I've moved 5 times.
Wow.
From friends to relatives, you know, and now I have a place of my, you know, my own. But so
your retreat, your space
yeah.
for your
Yeah.
Sanctuary.
peace,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
your
Yeah,
peace.
your sanctuary, yeah. Comfort.
Yeah, so
That's cool.
I'm showing myself compassion in knowing that I don't, I was moving for everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, to be somewhere
To help them.
to help them and me. Like I'd have a free place to stay, you know, but I could help them. I always help
Right.
them with chores and stuff. But, yeah, things are getting better because I'm having compassion for myself. And like yesterday, our family in general has moved a lot too, besides me. Like today, when this is over, I'm gonna spend day 2 helping my niece and her significant other into a new house, along with some other relatives. So, but yesterday, I had compassion on myself because usually I'd stay from,
Jump in there.
you know, from dusk till dawn and then to one day to the next, however long it took, you know. But I said to myself, you know, I was packing up her kitchen and there was so much stuff in there. And they had all left to go to the new house. And it's just me there. And I was packing up, you know, spices and medicines and little everything, you know, in the kitchen. But then I thought to myself, you know, I think I have spent long enough here. And that it had been an hour and a half or maybe 2 hours. I said, I'm going home.
Good
It's
for
like,
you.
this is big, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Good
I
for
mean,
you.
really, that was a big move on your part because you didn't. I'm bad about doing something like that, and guilt will get to me every time.
Yeah.
Well, if I leave, I'm just, you know, I'm shirking my duty, you know, and they're gonna think, you know, bad of me, and or I'm being soft, or I'm not being strong, or, you know, come on, what's most important to you? Why do you put everybody else?
Guilt is a good one.
Yeah, just guilt.
Yeah,
And,
like super guilt.
You know, and I've hung in for long periods of time with people trying to help them.
Yeah.
And finding out that I wasn't helping them, I was really hurting them by not empowering them to do it on their own, you know.
Right.
But golly, how many years have I spent